Well, good morning, Cerberus audience. You have the one and the only co-host of Waking Up Cerberus, Mr. Gregory Junkbond Carpenter here with a cast of characters that will delight you and incite you to happiness, joy, and love. As a matter of fact, we are going to contain and give to you this morning the secrets of the Summer of Love of 1967. That's right, the triangle theory of love, passion, intimacy, and commitment. We've got it all here for you this morning on the Cerberus Radio Network. Everyone, do not be scared. Be happy, be confident, and love. Man, I love that. Off in the production land, we have the producer who produces from the hip, Mr. Jeff Johnson, and my lovely, dynamic, and super awesome co-host from the hinterlands of Uter, the delightful and lovely Miss Suzanne Sherman. Good morning, Suzanne.
Good morning. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I seem to be having some
You
issues.
sound delightful.
Do I sound okay?
You sound delightful.
Well, I'm having problems with my internet, so if it's breaking up, let me know and I will let you do the housekeeping chores, but hopefully this will work. Good morning, everybody. I am bright-eyed and bushy-tailed despite the fact that I was out outrageously late last night. I got home at about 10:30 last night, which is crazy for me. I had some escapades behind enemy lines and
Well, there goes her internet.
And there she goes. I guess those escapades behind enemy lines have made it even more dynamically dangerous for her to return to the air. So once we get Suzanne Sherman back on the air, we will let you know. We'll be the first ones to tell you. It'll be breaking news. Well, of course, breaking news is just as interesting as any other news, but in this case, we'll have Suzanne back with us. So, Jeff, I'm going to have to defer to you for the housekeeping because I never took notes on that stuff. And you, sir, you embraced the spirit of Woodstock this morning.
Well, Woodstock 50 sounds like it's dead.
I think so.
You're doing with this because the producer, the main producer, backed out now.
Right. I know. That's the sad part. I'm trying to revive it myself.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of turned into a big joke up here because it's Woodstock 50. If for those of you out there, we'll go off on this stupid tangent for a second.
That's fine. Yeah, if you don't know about it, here you go.
It's in
it was in the works.
Well, it's supposed to have been in Watkins Glen at the Watkins Glen racetrack where they have a NASCAR race in August.
And they have lots of room up there too, by the way.
They have lots of room. They can do it. They have room for hundreds of thousands of people. During NASCAR, there's about 200,000 people. It becomes one of the largest cities in the state of New York at that time. So they're going to have it there. They're going to have a bunch of crappy bands. I'm not going to go into the ones that are crappy.
Is Country Joe and the Fish going to come back?
I don't know who's going to be there now. No one's going to be there now, as far as I know, because the producer backed out now. They may get it off, but by the time they get it off, no one's going to show up because they're going to have to sell the tickets like the day before that it goes off.
Well, isn't that how it happened back in '69?
Well, I don't know.
I just showed up.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know. So anyway, enough about Woodstock 50 and the debacle that has befuddled it. And, it's really funny is this is the second concert this year that's had a problem up there at Watkins Glen International because every year they have Fish. I'm not a big Fish fan, but evidently there's a huge following because they packed that place with almost 100,000 people for Fish. So, but this year it didn't go off. I don't know what happened to that, but Fish didn't go, and all the Fishites were, they
didn't have the right kind of fish bait.
They were dead and stinking, so it was all over. Anyway, so we got this show, we got that show.
And this is the essence of a morning show, folks.
Without
the person who does the housekeeping, we are essentially lost on the housekeeping section. We have SoundCloud, we have a YouTube thing, we got some of this, we got some of that.
If you have missed the show on SoundCloud, they're there. There's almost 200 episodes out there now, and they're all downloaded for free. So download them there, share them with all your friends. We have YouTube. This is on YouTube, and I just saw Suzanne pop back in here into our virtual studio. So we have YouTube. We have people that can listen here, join the live chat here.
Hey, Mr. Producer.
Bunch of shows. So yes.
Hey, Mr. Producer. Let's see if Suzanne can talk here. Suzanne, can you talk here?
Well, I can talk. Whether or not my internet's going to cooperate is another thing. I
All
reset
right.
the. Yeah.
So here's the deal.
Yeah.
Jeff, let's let her finish the housekeeping stuff. Your voice is awesome, but hers is really good this morning. So I'd like to continue on with hearing Suzanne giving us. And besides, if Jeff keeps going on like this, we're going to end up with a band like Fish playing in the background for us in the future. Don't worry, you missed that part, Suzanne.
Who's Fish?
That's what I always ask.
I'm feeling.
Who said you can't have fun in the morning, huh?
Oh my goodness.
They play at Watkins Glen every summer. Well, they used to, but this year they didn't because they died or something. The whole concert died, and that was
I told them they had the wrong kind of bait.
They went belly up.
Yeah, they went belly up. They're floating. All right.
Well, everything floats in the Hudson, doesn't it?
You can have a little fun with this once in a while.
Everything floats in the Hudson, my friend. Small rocks, fish, churches,
humans.
You name it.
Hey, if anybody's still listening, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network, our fan page, CRN. We have a YouTube page with a live chat. Again, if anybody's still with us, join the fun. We're having a great time here. SoundCloud, if you can't listen live, go to our SoundCloud page. Subscribe to YouTube. Follow us on SoundCloud. You can find all of that, my articles and blog, also on SuzanneCSherman.com. We'll get some more shows recorded for you as well to put up on the SoundCloud page. We do have other things besides our wonderful Waking Up Cerberus show. Junk Bond has a show of his own called The Spy Who Loves Liberty. He also does some Liberty Minutes, which are outstanding. I have Case in Point, where I review relevant cases by the Black Robe Messiahs going back from the very get-go. And let's see, Fundamentals of Federalism. Got a whole bunch of stuff on there. Junk Bond, I think you were going to continue with the story that we started at the end of yesterday's show. Fascinating story that was republished by Zero Hedge, but it was about the unnoticed revolution. I'd like you to expound upon that and continue where we left off. So I'll turn it over to you, put my feet up, and enjoy my coffee.
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of recapping, and
I love recaps.
Well, sure. I mean, we got to do a reset here, right? So that's what the official term is.
Nightcap. Nightcap.
Nightcap.
Yeah. Okay, Jeff. And that's why I'm able to. It's funny. So before we came on this morning, and just one more little sidetrack here before we actually get into something serious. My voice has been shot. I'm getting Mrs. Junk Bond's cold. She's been sick the last few days now. Terrible cough and sinus infection, stuff like that. And of course, the hardest thing in the world to get a registered nurse to do is what? Go to the doctor. You can't. This is not going to happen. But anyway, I called one of my friends who's a physician. I said, "Hey, Rob, why don't you serve up some of those Z-Packs over here, and I'll go pick them up at the pharmacy, and I'll hide it inside Mrs. Carpenter's tea. I'll dissolve it in the tea, and then she'll get better." See? Well, that worked. She's almost over this cold. However, in removing the threat to her immune system, it did find a new host to go to, and that would be me. So when Jeff talks about a nightcap, it actually is a morning cap that I was wearing because I needed to get my voice up and running for the show this morning. So what did I do? Well, I hit, just like you were talking about, Jeff, I hit the whiskey. That's the only thing that I know that will clear all the phlegm out of my throat and everything and make me able to speak in not necessarily a logical manner, but a clear manner so that people actually can listen and hear what I'm saying. Not that it matters at all. I'm just going to babble on, but at least they'll be able to hear me. So for anybody out there who has not partaken of whiskey in the morning, when you have a cold, I would tell you that it was used by moms for hundreds of years hundreds of years to treat colds because the whiskey actually does. The amount of alcohol in there is equal to that of what's called terrapin hydrate, which was used in cough syrup for many, many years, 40 to 43%. So it kills all the bugs. So I may not need to have a Z-Pack or antibiotics myself, but I will be ready and happy to move along. So how was that for a recap, Jeff? He's producing.
Nope.
You're producing, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, he's producing. Okay, and we don't want to break into that production process.
There's a lot of alcohol in these cough medicines. I mean, look at NyQuil. I remember when I went to the movies with my mom when I was, I think, 20 years old, and I brought a bottle of Vicks 44 with me. I should have been
Oh,
in a
wow.
mask. And every time I felt like coughing, I didn't want to disrupt the people in the theater, so I take a little, little sippy poo. And I was staggering by the time I got out of that place, and I couldn't understand why. And then I realized, oh, there's a lot of alcohol in here.
That's right. Yeah, it's 44%. That's what it is. That's why it's Vicks 44. See that?
Anyway,
Okay. Anyway, back to the real crisis at hand, not my health, because I am easily replaced. We were talking about gold and Basel III. Now, it's considered a revolution that nobody noticed because it happened at such a high level that nobody actually realized what was going on. The essence of it is it's that the Bank for International Settlements runs the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, funded mostly by these hither United States, and which in turn runs the central banks of all other countries. Most countries around the world have a centralized banking system now. We used to not have one. We do have one, the Federal Reserve. In England, the Bank of England, and on in each different country. Well, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision is the controlling body that makes decisions on how money is perceived and used. That's a good way of putting it, throughout the world. So you think that you're on an independent standard with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, which is ruining your life and my life, is literally a lapdog to the BCBS. Now, that may sound a little bit extreme, a little bit harsh, but the Federal Reserve can only do what the BCBS says to do, as in with all other central banks around the world. One of the issues that we found, for example, was when Saddam Hussein had attempted to assert the authority of Iraq and put his economy onto a gold standard. Suzanne, what happened to him?
he gone.
He gone. Okay. Muammar Gaddafi attempted to take the African nations under the African Union, unite them, and issue an African gold standard to back money and securities in Africa. What happened to him?
Ditto Gaddafi.
Right. This is going to be the fate of anyone who crosses the line. This has been predetermined. The devaluation let me put it this way, the forced inflation and the devaluation of paper currencies, fiat currencies, is essential to make rich people richer. The world system was exclusively based on dollars, and that was done by who? By the BCBS back in 1944. It was reformed in 1976 in Jamaica. Gold's equivalency $1 equals $1 worth of gold, was canceled then. And remember, Richard Nixon was the president that put the nail in the coffin on the gold standard. FDR started it 1933. And then what did they do? They confiscated people's gold and they issued them paper currencies. We lost the gold certificates. We used to have gold certificates. Then we moved to silver certificates. The free silver movement of 1896. Remember that? The silver standard. William Jennings Bryant. He said, "Don't crucify the common man on a cross of gold." It was a huge, huge thing back in the day. He incited the common people to rise up and fight, literally fight, to remove the gold standard. And that's it in motion. A whole bunch of other things. So fast forward, after 1976, the dollar became it was the only world money because when its equivalency to gold was canceled, gold was no longer considered the international exchange baseline. It was only the dollar, which was a fiat currency at that time. Gold became just an ordinary exchange good, like you can exchange in trading places, right? With Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, pork bellies. They were talking, well, what do you do with pork belly? Well, it's bacon, right? And anything else, sugar, any other metals, diamonds, all those things, they're exchange goods. They're traded on the markets. They're commodities. Well, once the inflation in the dollar started to rise disproportionately to what could be controlled, the international standard changed to oil, which is where we are right now. Everything's based on what's called the petrodollar. Did you ever hear of this thing, the petrodollar, Suzanne?
I have. In fact, there's a really good video on it that I watched, and the connection we have with Saudi Arabia and the petrodollar. I have to find that again and watch it, but it was pretty compelling. It makes you really understand that if you think that your vote really matters and has much to do with your life and the way our government operates, you're sorely mistaken.
Yeah, just take out the crack pipe now and just keep smoking because it's over. Right, and that happened a long time ago. It started, this relationships with the Saud family started a long time, longer than you can even think. It wasn't in the 30s like everybody thinks. It was long before that. But I digress. So now the international standard is the petrodollar. So there was a lot of conjecture that there would be issues when Russia decided to move from the petrodollar back to the ruble. And when did this happen? Oh, I don't know. How about the same time that Ukraine became destabilized? But see, the Russian Empire, per se, at odds with the American Empire, was too big to assassinate the leader and too big, right, to actually go in and try to assassinate the leader. And this is not based off of any special intelligence that Greg had because he worked at the National Security Agency. No. And I'll add my required disclaimer for stuff like this is that none of this came from NSA or any NSA data. This is what I have gleaned from years of reading and paying attention. We couldn't kill Putin. We couldn't. Too big of a problem. Could we kill Gaddafi? Sure. Could we kill Hussein? Sure. They're much, much smaller players. Did we have a reason to kill Hussein? Technically, no. We really had no reason to kill him. He
I
was the
remember,
leader of a sovereign state, right?
I remember Ann Coulter slobbering away on some network show saying hysterically, he has rape rooms in there. Again, what concern of ours is that? There are atrocities around the world. So we have to ask ourselves, are we going to put our troops there and be the world's police? So, as we've discussed, there was another reason besides the atrocities he
Right.
was maybe committing for us to go in there. And look at Hillary Clinton laughing about it. We came, we saw, he died, and cackled away. Where's the morality in any of this?
And there is none. As a matter of fact, when I was stationed over there, I stayed in Uday and Kusei's little palace. That's where our office was. We took that thing over. And they were the ones who would drive around town, pick up women, have their way, and then throw them back out on the street or so. Um, but I would submit that, and I had gotten into this horrible discussion with somebody who was, what's the, oh, I know, the holier than thou about the national religion that we hold. I said, more people have died. Many, many more people have died since we uh, came to rescue Iraq and turned it into a democracy than would have died under Saddam Hussein by far. Dictatorships come, dictatorships go. I took from the CIA World Book a list of all the world dictators, and you'd be surprised at some of the countries where dictators are in place and how well the people are treated and how well they're doing, how much better than us they are when you look at the scale of what's that called, the Freedom Index, how many laws, how many problems they have. You know, there's something to be said for an oligarchy in many cases. But anyway, I digress off of those. So if you're going to go against the petrodollar system, you are going to fall on hard times, like Putin has realized. We were drawing close to the Russians, right? And then back in about 2010, Obama said, hey, we want to play in this Eastern European energy market. And Putin said, no, this is mine. As a matter of fact, we're going to transition from the petrodollar and make the ruble, because we would like our currency to be stronger. Ooh, can they do that? Are they allowed to make their currency stronger? Apparently not. So anyway, how does that all tie in? Well, Basel III, the decision that they came to, made gold a third. It became a third category of commodity that was traded. So it was estimated at about 50% of its value on the balance sheets in the world banks. Now, remember, we have the fiat currency, which is running massive inflation, the devaluation of the gold, the depression of the actual value of the gold has been put in place for many, many, many years. Many years. So, what happens now? Well, what just happened was at Basel III, they decided to place gold not in the third, but just in the first category again. Now, what does that mean? That means gold cannot be traded at 50% of its value, but must be traded at 100% of its value. Now, since gold has been traded at only half its value for the last numerous decades, and now it's forced to turn around, that means that governments that are holding gold, or people that are holding gold, like the U.S., the article says that the U.S. has 8,133.5 metric tons of gold, which is, not bad. Chump change. I could throw that out in my backyard. I probably have plenty of room out there. The concept that gold is now a first category, doubles the value of the gold immediately. You don't need a market action in order to raise the value of the gold substantially. So, Jeff, do the math on that if you would. 8,133.5 metric tons times what's gold trading at now? About $1,500 an ounce. You just go ahead and knock that out for me real quick, and let's see what the value of that is and how that changes. It is a game changer. Why do you think all of this debt that's being rung up is meaningless? I said this what 3 weeks ago. Our debt is meaningless. We're going to forfeit on it. It's going to go. It's going to disappear. It's not going to be paid back. We don't care what the international market says our credit rating is. It doesn't matter because we have the biggest economy, and now we just doubled our own worth. So you think if you have, $5 trillion in gold in reserve, it's now worth $10 trillion. Or if you have $100 trillion in gold, $200 trillion, all of a sudden, overnight. The people high up in the system knew this. They know what's happening. This is, and again, it's annoying to me, the fact that a gold confiscation happened a number of years ago, because most of the gold in the United States were held by the people, not necessarily by the government. A huge amount that would have increased the wealth of each common person individually to such an amazing level.
If that were to happen today, and this is a problem because I think now when you buy gold, it's tracked.
Yes, it is. Every transaction of gold is tracked.
So, what boggles my mind is how many people actually complied with this. And I think that was made possible because of the contention going on, maybe in the international sphere, whether or not we were actively at war. We just finished the Great War that was supposed to end all wars. We had this growing power in the government and possibly a loyalty to it. I can't for the life of me understand why anybody complied. Was that gold already tracked at the time? I don't know.
I don't know, but it is kind of a uh, awkward place for us to be, because by this autumn, the price of gold, per ounce is going to go. It's going to add at least another 30-40% to its overall value.
Has it done so already? And if not, why not? If this already happened?
Because it takes time to actually uh, transition and load the digits. There we go. Like Jeff said yesterday, load the digits back in the system. You just can't open up the floodgates and add all these printed dollars into the economy. It would crash the economy. So much like the what was that stimulus thing that Obama had and Bush did back in 2008, 2007, something like that, where they had that $800 billion stimulus thing. And most of that money never made it into circulation. It was held by the central banks, which just increased their bottom line, their profits. It didn't have any effect on the people whatsoever.
My life didn't change as a result of that. Nothing got better for me. Didn't get
Right.
worse.
Right. And so now people understand why Russia and China, you heard in the news that they were purchasing vast amounts of gold over the last few years or so, right? The amount of gold in China just skyrocketed because they were buying it at 50% value.
Yeah, and
They
so
knew what was going to happen.
India was in that group too. They were buying
That's right.
gold reserves.
That's right. But we didn't.
Why?
So, and that's the $1 million question. Why didn't we do that? It's kind of a strange thing to think that we wouldn't want to do that, knowing that this is what's happening. But the bottom line is, when we get to autumn, you're going to see this valuation of gold accelerate and go. It'll go up and it'll accelerate even faster, up to its full valuation eventually. But you're going to have, so the money that gets injected into the world economy will increase, and you're going to have Russia and China again exert themselves and start to push for an isolation from the dollar, which will force the U.S. system to start to crumble, the economic system, and the Russian and Chinese system will be bolstered. And I believe that the reason we didn't buy all this gold over time is maybe, and it was Russia and China that did buy all the gold, by the way. I would say that we're looking at a situation where Russia and China and India and some other countries had the insider information on what was going on. And because they're looking to stand up their own currencies independent of the dollar, it might be that they took the extra caution to ensure that their world leaders were not assassinated by trying to pull off of the petrodollar and off of the US dollar, that they took it an extra step. And now it looks like it's going to be a reality. You're going to see redrawing of I mean, you're talking about economic instability and problems that will be coming around in the fall. And this is the reason, because all of this is controlled, like I mentioned yesterday, Suzanne, in Zurich, in Switzerland. Why didn't Hitler take out Switzerland? Because they were funding him. And they were funding the UK. And they were funding Italy. You see, this is where the control for all of the banking interests happen. The Basel III decision came out of the BCBS, which has its home in the Swiss banking system. They're the ones who run it. They're the ones who make all the magic happen and the sorcery. It's not our bank down the street. They're just useful idiots just like we are.
So is it fair to say that if I just saw an article that it comes across as fantastic news, everybody should be encouraged by this. Ron Paul appointed to the Federal Reserve Board. Where you stand at the chair, sadly, this was from Babylon B. Satire. But the fact, now, let's say that somebody like Ron Paul was, in fact, appointed to the Federal Reserve Board, or perhaps candidate Trump followed through as President Trump, where he was going to deal with the Federal Reserve Board. Would that, in fact, given what you've told us, have any impact or change given who really is in charge of the bank system? It seems we're
No.
kind of low on the totem pole here.
No, the Federal Reserve is up there, and they are complying with the Zurich crowd. They're doing what they're told, and did what they were told back in Jekyll Island. The BCBS is still, and back then they weren't known as a BCBS, and it wasn't the BIS, okay, the Bank for International Settlements. These names came across later. They were organizations that were put in place that validated or gave legitimacy to the processes that were already in place, the things that were already happening. You see, do we have people that can make an impact, that can have real change affect those decisions? Possibly. But you're going to have to make the case that says, okay, here at the Federal Reserve, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And the guys at the BCBS are going to say, okay, well, how's that going to benefit me, right? Because that's what any higher level organization is going to do. Okay, it's great that you want to do something that'll, make it better for you guys there and make you guys richer and make your citizens poorer, the transition of wealth. But how are we going to get a piece? Where's our cut in this? So the Federal Reserve and all other central banks have to go back and make a justification on why what they want to do is meaningful and helpful to the International Monetary Fund and evidently, eventually to the BIS. I think that they can have some type of an effect, but it would have to be something where the BIS could make a serious profit uh, because the plans that they put together are a collection of all of the other countries' economies and how they can skim the money off top there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my notes here, I'm writing to myself asking, and I think you've already addressed some of this, is how much impact this has on the United States and how much in turn influence does the United States have on these organizations. Then now you answered the latter, very little. We're up there. The Federal Reserve is up there, but clearly we are not calling the shots. So how is this going to impact us? How is this going to impact deglobalization, decentralization efforts like Brexit that is currently ongoing? I remember some of the struggles had to do with the central banking that's going to act as a leash to bring them back in. What's going to happen to just the rank and file subjects? Again, I say I don't call ourselves or the people of this world citizens at this point. We are subjects. What's going to happen? Are we going to see increases in prices, in loan expenses? Any thoughts?
Well, so I'm not an economic major. My major's in public health and medicine stuff. Um, and I did happen to stay at the Holiday Inn Express last night, which was bugged by the NSA. So I believe, uh, I believe what's going to be happening is that some of the holders of gold, the larger ones, Russia, China, U.S., Switzerland. Switzerland owns lots and lots of gold. Nobody talks about that. Uh, Countries like that. That's just where the gold reserves anywhere it will exceed between 1,000 and 2,000 metric tons. That would be a significant country like the ones I mentioned.
And the article states that Britain is not among those. They have less than 1,000. They wouldn't even be a significant holder in this.
That's right, and that's where I was getting to, is that the British gold reserves are extremely low. They only have, I think, about 892 metric tons, something like that. They're very, very low. The royal family has more gold holdings than England does.
Do we know what our gold holdings are? I think you said the 8,000.
Yeah, 8133 metric tons, I think it was. The article had it listed in there somewhere. That's what we're telling people.
Well, that's what you said. That's what we're telling people. Has anybody been allowed in Fort Knox?
No.
Wait, no. Do we know how much
No.
gold is there? No, okay, I didn't think so.
But thanks for asking. Thanks for playing our game.
Thanks for playing, folks. The other concern I've had too, and I don't know if I'm digressing too much, is the amount of public lands that are held by the federal ownership, particularly here out west.
Well, let me finish and answer your question on Brexit real quick. Okay, and then we can get into what is it, the BLM, right?
Right.
Bureau of Land Management and Stupidity. So with the UK gold holdings being substantial, and now the Scottish gold holdings are higher than the British gold holdings, and this is kind of interesting. So Scotland has been very vocal about wanting to secede from the quote UK as the UK secedes from the EU, and it's pretty much predetermined that Scotland will go back and join the EU after they secede from the UK, leaving England and Northern Ireland and Wales to stand on their own. The British economy will be in a very, very difficult position because they're not going to get that kick up of valuation like all the other EU countries are. And the other EU countries are not so concerned either because of their national debt. It's just in certain situations, like in Greece, it exceeded the point where they could recover from. You see, so that's why Greece became problematic. But the debt can run up as high as they want it to because of this this valuation that's going to be coming up soon. Most of the debt around the world will probably be canceled, or it could be paid off very easily. England will not be in that situation. England will be in the situation that any plus up they have will be minimal, and eventually they will be forced back into the EU. I can see that coming, or else they're going to have to go and take the path less traveled, as Robert Frost would say, the road less traveled, and make a hard time of it, which won't be pretty. So now you can flip back over to the BLS and give us talk about their lands.
Well, one of the considerations or concerns I had quite some time back was the vast expanse of lands that are owned by the feds, particularly out here in the West. You just don't see that on the East Coast. Utah, I think, is 85 or something like close to %, if not higher, owned by federal government. We have a lot of minerals in there. Look at the Malheur reserves out there where the boy Finicum was executed. There was something of interest to the feds out there, uranium. And my concern, I've always said, wouldn't we start maybe surrendering these lands, the rights, if not ownership, over to countries and with which we are indebted, as a way of maybe paying off some of our debt? And this is what's interesting to me is we have these people, for instance, the UNESCO folks that want to surrender this to the United Nations. They're so afraid that the states, if they actually control the land within their once sovereign borders, are going to destroy this land and develop it and ruin it for everybody else. Our good friend Tom Mullen, who we mentioned yesterday, said, how polluted is Disneyland? Private ownership. When people actually have a say in the care and the land in which they are taking care of, the local communities are going to want to take better care of it. So to me, it's always been a concern that the general government owned so much land while it also acquires so much debt. Let's say, for the sake of hypotheticals, that they took whatever they needed to do and paid off our debt. Do you really think we would remain debt free and out of this disastrous situation again forever? It would
I don't think they'll. No, I don't think they'll pay it off.
No.
They're not planning on paying it off.
No.
They're planning on just letting it cancel.
So where does that leave us? Leaves me in the mountains. I set up. I mean, I think owning gold, if there's a collapse, you can't eat gold and silver. However, if there's a system of recovery, eventually, at least you will have something that was once respected as having intrinsic value, like gold or silver. In the meantime, folks, you better have what you need for some time. I don't care if it's a natural disaster or if this comes to fruition that we're talking about today.
I think we're in a tough position. I think we're going to have a lot of problems going forward, and I believe that the federal government's lock on the Western lands really does have more to do with maintaining control of the minerals and assets in those lands than anything else. There's no gold in New York City, not unless you're a rapper. Out west, we have all types of mineral deposits, and I think that's what the focus of retaining the lands are. in a real and meaningful sense. I don't I don't see them giving up control either. And I see that as we transition through the fall, economic issues are going to hit, but the federal government is going to be able to stay in place for a period of time. Right? This actually could be the thing that topples the Fed, and and that's the reason why everybody is so against at the international level. So many people are against Trump because I think he sees it. I think he understands what's going on, and he doesn't want to play that game. He wants to break free of the centralized banking, and that's where the real fight is. It's not the Democrats and the Republicans in the Congress and at the federal level have already drank that Kool-Aid. They're supporting the international banking cartel, as Booger would call them. Trump's not willing to do that. He actually is focusing his efforts on here and making us better. There's an article that came out the other day from a former CIA dude who said, yeah, the CIA is full of Democrats and people that were appointed quasi illegally by the Obama administration just to make sure that if something like this happened where Trump came in, that uh, he would face all kinds of problems with them. And the implication is they're not done messing with him yet. They have support. They have top cover. It's a very interesting thing to watch. I wish it wasn't happening, but it is. And we're going to have a huge price to pay sometime in the next couple of years or so. I just don't have a very good feeling about this whole thing.
And in the next year now, we are ramping up towards the next dog and pony show that we have every 4 years. And I always watch when we start with these debates and what all the platforms are. And you don't hear anybody with any serious concern. They talk about the economy, jobs, equality, but you don't hear anybody addressing our system of fiat currency. The other thing that we really don't have anybody, other than what I've heard Tulsi Gabbard, is really excoriating our system of empire building and intervention around the world. Mitt Romney, I remember him being interviewed in the last when he was running, saying how we have got to be in these places before the trouble starts. How can we possibly be there without this military industrial complex spending? Somebody said yesterday, we're not cutting spending back. Obama was accused of cutting the military back. He just slowed the growth of it. How can we sustain what we are doing? I don't think we can. What do you envision for our children or our children's children? What are our progeny going to experience?
I think that they're going to have a very different world than we have right now. And I believe that the world that we're in isn't really what we think it is. I've mentioned before, when I worked for the feds, I was the guy who made that Kool-Aid for people to drink. And I've mentioned before that it's no surprise. Let me put it this way. It should be no surprise that the director of the former CIA director, William Casey, told Ronald Reagan on his first meeting, he said, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. That meeting happened in the Roosevelt Room in the West Wing of the White House near the Cabinet Room. And it happened in 1981. Yes, he did say that. Why? Because we are all being used. Your wealth is being stolen with you at every aspect of your life. You shouldn't even question this anymore. I don't know why people have such a hard time believing it. The talking heads on all the other radio stations and TV stations, they're sitting and talking about what? They're not talking about the actual problem itself, because nobody will get that close to the problem. Nobody will identify what the real problem is. There always has to be a level of abstraction that keeps people away from the real problem. Why? Because it's too damn scary. People don't like that stuff. They like to live and be oblivious about what's going on because that's more comfortable and it doesn't hurt and it's not going to take effect in my lifetime. And if it does, it's not going to hurt me that much. People minimize what the problem really is and how much of an effect it's going to have on them and their children. I warn my children all the time. I tell them, be ready. Make sure. Make sure. Baby Sasquatch and I, we go out and we go shooting as much as possible. And when Caitlin's back up here from school, I take her out shooting as much as possible. Why? Because you're going to need those skills. I taught them all the skills, all the things that Suzanne talks about in prepping. Why? Because they need those skills. I had this strong urge many years ago, back when I was a youngin', to join the Army. And that's another story for another day. But I eventually joined and I went in what? I went into the infantry. Why? Because I like to be abused, because I like to walk around with 100 pounds on my back every day, because I like to walk 25, 50, 100 miles at a click. Man, no big deal, right? No, because I knew that I would eventually gain all the skills that I needed to be able to survive on my own in any type of a situation. I learned how to be a prisoner of war. I learned all kinds of stuff. I went to survival schools, you name it. The Army sent me there. I learned all about it. And I pass that on to my kids because I know my kids are going to face a much more terrible situation than I'm facing here. I still have a house. I have a roof. I have running water. I have this electricity stuff, which gives me a voice on the radio. I don't know if all those things will be in place in 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know what the landscape is going to look like. I can't see that far ahead in my crystal ball. But I can tell you that from the things that I used to do and what I see happening right now, I do not believe that this is going to be the same standard of living in 10 or 15 or 20 years. I believe it's going to be a very different landscape with new and unique problems. And that will be a combination of governments changing. I don't know if there'll be socio-political lines redrawn or what, but a combination of that and unregulated technology is going to wreak havoc on the general population.
And
That's my 2 cents.
we also see, again, we talk about the intellectual dumbing down of society, but we also, as you mentioned, the skills that you're teaching your children, and I've taught mine. We see this development of a reliant society that is completely unable to take care of themselves. And this is perpetuated. We see this all the time on the media. Some of the television ads that are popping into my head right now. There was one, I don't remember the product, but it was a woman eating a frozen food and she had this beautiful setup. She was in the lunchroom at a business, and everybody was just absolutely mystified because they were under the mistaken assumption that had she actually made this meal herself. It looked like a home cooked meal. And the fact that a woman actually made a home cooked meal, these people were gobsmacked. Well, fear not, she didn't have to. She just popped it in the microwave. There's another insurance company.
Oh, thank God. That's all she had to do. Oh, God.
There's an insurance company out there that shows how the company's available at all hours to change the tires for these teenage boys because heaven forbid anybody would know how to change a tire. So you're going to send your kids out, and I have to say I just learned how to do this recently. It's always bothered me that I never had done that myself. But it's just accepted that your children, particularly males, are not going to have a tire. I think it's more important even for females to do it because the kind of people that are likely to stop them anyway. I digress. But it's just accepted. If you are in trouble, you pick up your phone. I spend a significant amount of time where there is no cell service. What if the phones are down? What if your battery is dead? What if your
Fir-
car gets stuck in
First
sand?
world problem. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
Somebody is going to be there to help you. There's going to be a time where you're going to have to rely on yourself. And these incidents happen today. People just don't realize it. How easy is it to get lost in the woods? There's a series, I loved this show. I don't know remember who was playing. It was called, I think it was called I Shouldn't Be Alive. And so many of these scenarios were people just out for a walk in the woods where they were actually dropped off. There was one couple I'm thinking of that got dropped off by a tourist bus up on a mountain somewhere. They thought they heard a waterfall. Anybody that's been out in the woods, it's a really weird feeling when you're in the wilderness. It always sounds like there's running water somewhere. Haven't you experienced that, you guys?
Oh yeah, all the time.
So these city dwellers are walking around looking for this waterfall. The terrain is very rugged. They lose the trail. They have absolutely nothing with them. I have this saying I like to use. We were just. They were just going to take a shuttle ride to the top of the mountain and then come back down. And the bus left without them. They figured they got another ride home. They were out.
Or my favorite,
Yeah.
it was a 3-hour tour.
Yeah. What are people doing with all those clothes for a 3-hour tour, by the way? I don't bring that much stuff with me. I'm away for a week somewhere.
I know some people who bring way more than I could even imagine necessary. So yeah, oh yeah, I can believe it. Especially the Howls 3-hour tour. I could see them like having people load stuff on the SS Minnow for them.
But the point being, there might be a time when, and we see this all the time with the hurricanes, with these other disasters where there is no running water. Christopher, a producer on our other network, when they were going through Hurricane Katrina, they were out without power for weeks. They came together as a
Right.
community. What if you're on your own? I am out here in the middle of nowhere. And I have been snowed in. I got snowed in several times this winter. Or if something else happens where it's simply not safe to go out, there can be a disaster where the power lines come out. How are you going to get water? I've got a creek behind my yard. So, okay, I have a source of water. Do I have the means to purify it? These are things you have to think about. People don't consider it. They just think
Yes, I do.
the water is the Walmart's always going to be open. You can go out and get it. I have set up so, if I'm gone, I consider the supplies I have as money in the bank that might
Oh,
be
definitely.
someday. But
Definitely.
you're not going to be, if those little digits, computerized digits disappear, they just vaporize. What are you going to do? What if you lose your job?
You're gonna be lost.
We're
You really are. People people get teased because they're preppers. There's isn't the Boy Scout motto be prepared? Why why is it all of a sudden something that is bad to prepare in case something bad happens? How many preppers were there back during the revolution? Well,
everybody was a prepper.
there you go.
Everybody was in charge of their own security. They educated their kids. They were able to teach their kids in accordance with their values. As we wrap up the show, think about how things have transformed from back then, where we really did have community. Our communities are now irrelevant. We're going to talk about the American Community Survey next week a little bit more with the census.
Arr.
I know. Glenn, I want
You
to
stay classy, Cerberus.
we kind of had a heady topic today, but I want to thank those who stuck with us. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. God bless.
God bless.